For nearly a century, black African kings ruled Egypt. They controlled the most powerful civilization of the ancient world. They built pyramids, commanded armies, and shaped the course of history along the Nile. These were not conquerors from a distant land. They were the rightful heirs to a kingdom that had existed for over 1,000 years. A kingdom that history has almost forgotten. At the end of this video, we'll show you how this African empire ruled Egypt and shaped power across the Nile for generations. Keep watching and smash that subscribe button to support our work and never miss stories like this. The Kingdom of Kush emerged from Nubia, the land we now call Sudan. It stretched along the Nile River, south of Egypt's first cataract at Aswan. This was not empty desert. This was a crossroads of civilizations. The Nile provided life. Gold deposits made Kush wealthy. Iron ore gave them superior weapons. Trade routes connected Africa to the Mediterranean world. Egypt had always looked south with both desire and fear. They called Nubia the land of the bow because of its skilled archers. For centuries, Egypt raided Nubian territories for gold and slaves. But Nubia learned. Nubia adapted. Nubia grew strong. By 1000 BCE, Kush had built something Egypt no longer possessed: unity. While Egypt fractured into competing kingdoms, Kush consolidated power under a single throne in their capital, Napata. Their economy thrived on three pillars. Gold mines in the eastern desert generated immense wealth. Iron production gave them military superiority. Trade networks stretched from Central Africa to the Mediterranean. The Kushites organized their society around divine kingship, but with a crucial difference. Their kings answered to powerful priests who could depose rulers who failed to serve the gods properly. But what happens when a rising power meets a declining empire? By 750 BCE, Egypt was broken. The country had split into rival kingdoms. Priests fought pharaohs for control. Foreign mercenaries roamed the land. The glory of the pyramids seemed like a distant memory. King Piye of Kush watched this chaos from Napata. He saw opportunity. More importantly, he saw duty. The Kushites believed they were the true guardians of Egyptian religion and culture. Piye launched his campaign around 743 BCE. His armies moved north with disciplined precision. Egyptian kings surrendered without major battles. Those who resisted were crushed by superior Kushite iron weapons. Within 5 years, Piye controlled all of Egypt. He established the 25th dynasty. Africa ruled the Pharaohs. The most famous of these African pharaohs was Taharqa, who ruled from 690 to 664 BCE. He restored Egypt's glory through massive building projects. He constructed temples at Karnak that still stand today. He revived ancient religious traditions that had been abandoned for generations. Here's what most people don't know. When the Assyrian king Sennacherib threatened Jerusalem, it was Taharqa who marched an Egyptian Kushite army to defend the city. The Bible mentions this African king saving the Hebrew people from one of history's most powerful empires. The Kushite pharaohs were not foreign occupiers. They were more Egyptian than the Egyptians. They spoke the language. They practiced the religion with greater devotion than their predecessors. They restored Mat, the divine order that Egypt had lost. Under Kushite rule, Egypt became a major power again. Trade networks reached from Nubia to Palestine. Diplomatic relations extended to Assyria and Greece. The pharaoh's word carried weight from the Mediterranean to Central Africa. Religious authority flowed from the temples of Napata and Thebes. Pilgrims traveled hundreds of miles to receive blessings from the Kushite pharaohs. Even rival kingdoms sent tribute to maintain peaceful relations. The Greeks called this dynasty the Ethiopian kings, using their word for burnt-faced people. These African rulers commanded respect and fear throughout the ancient world. But power attracts challengers. The Assyrian Empire, based in modern-day Iraq, was expanding westward. They had conquered most of the Middle East. Egypt was their next target. The Assyrians invaded repeatedly between 671 and 663 BCE. Their iron weapons matched Kushite technology. Their siege warfare overwhelmed Egyptian defenses. The Kushite pharaohs fought back fiercely, but the military strain was enormous. Taharqa retreated to Nubia, then returned to Egypt, then retreated again. The constant warfare exhausted both kingdoms. Finally, around 656 BCE, the Kushites made a strategic decision. They abandoned Egypt to preserve their homeland. Losing Egypt was not the end of Kush, it was a new beginning. The kingdom shifted its capital south to Meroë, near modern-day Khartoum. Here, they built something even more impressive than their Egyptian empire. Meroë became the iron production center of Africa. Furnaces burned continuously, creating weapons and tools that gave Kush technological superiority for centuries. The city's ruins still contain massive slag heaps from ancient iron works. They built pyramids too, lots of them. While Egypt constructed around 100 pyramids over 3,000 years, Kush built over 200 pyramids in 600 years. Their burial traditions blended Egyptian practices with distinctly African elements. Around 100 CE, trade routes began shifting. New kingdoms in Ethiopia controlled access to the Red Sea. Roman demand for African goods declined. The Sahara became harder to cross as climate patterns changed. The rise of Aksum in modern-day Ethiopia created direct competition for trade and regional influence. Kush found itself surrounded by rivals and cut off from its traditional sources of wealth. Environmental pressures added to the kingdom's troubles. The Nile's flood patterns changed. Agricultural productivity declined. The population could no longer support the same level of urbanization and military power. When European scholars began studying ancient history in the 18th and 19th centuries, they created a narrative that served their colonial ambitions. They portrayed Egypt as separate from Africa, despite being located on the African continent. Ancient Greek and Roman sources clearly described the Kushite pharaohs as African. Archaeological evidence proves their rule was legitimate and effective. But European historians minimized or ignored these facts. They couldn't accept that Black Africans had once ruled the most advanced civilization in the world. So they erased Kush from mainstream history textbooks. They turned one of Africa's greatest achievements into a forgotten footnote. The Kingdom of Kush proves something powerful. Africa has always been capable of building great civilizations. For over 1,000 years, this African empire controlled trade routes, influenced global politics, and preserved humanity's oldest cultural traditions. Their story reminds us that history is written by those in power, but the truth survives in stones and artifacts, in temple walls and pyramid chambers. The Black Pharaohs of Kush ruled with wisdom and strength. They deserve to be remembered. This is why we tell these stories. The past shapes our understanding of what's possible. And Africa's past is filled with achievements that the world needs to remember. If you enjoyed learning about this forgotten empire, there are more stories waiting to be told. Consider subscribing to join us on this journey through history's hidden chapters.